Let's move on to the D24, which is also known as the Siddhamsha. The D24 reveals our capacity to learn and to assimilate and transform knowledge. The D24 is the third of the inner Vargas. The D20 highlights our spiritual progress and devotion. The D16 provides the emotional foundation that we stand on. And the D24 shows our capacity for knowledge to evolve. Mercury and Jupiter are the important karakas in the D24. Mercury represents mundane intelligence and gives the ability to study, digest, and articulate knowledge. Jupiter, on the other hand, is the planet of higher knowledge. Jupiter governs the deeper truth of life, and this type of knowledge is meant to transform our being and lead to self-realization. How well we can understand the knowledge of the self and the truth of our existence is seen from Jupiter in the D24. And how good of a student we are in school or university is shown by Mercury in the D24. Whether we are attending an ordinary school or we are studying spiritual knowledge, to be a sincere student, we need two key qualities: humility and openness. Without humility, pride prevents learning. If we think we already know everything, then we are stuck with old and deficient ideas and we cannot develop true understanding. On the spiritual path, there's a saying, pride precedes the fall. When we refuse to give up our ego, then we are stuck in life and bound to relive the same trauma story. And so surrender and letting go of the ego is vital for changing our life in a meaningful way. The D24 is a 12th house Varga because it examines how well we can surrender our ego and grow intellectually and spiritually. A strong Mercury indicates a person who can genuinely learn and become smarter and more competent as life progresses. A strong Jupiter indicates a person who can learn from life's challenges and grow wiser over time. Afflictions to Mercury and Jupiter, and in general in the D24, indicates blockages to attaining greater knowledge and understanding. And so the D24 teaches an important principle, that true knowledge and humility are inseparable. It's not about proving how much we know, but about being willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn as life unfolds. And every time in the learning process, we are asked to surrender one more bit of our ego, so that hopefully one day we arrive at a state of perfect knowledge. Let's now take a look at this woman's Jupiter Dasha in the D24. This woman spent the first 11 years of her life in Jupiter Dasha. Jupiter is powerfully placed in Sagittarius in its Mula Trikona sign and in the 12th house. Jupiter also rules the important 12th house cusp. So right away we know that from the beginning of her life, even when she was just a child, she was inclined to contemplate and ask deep questions about life. Right? The 12th house deals with contemplation and the inner space where true understanding arises. And this is the house where Jupiter becomes important. Right? Jupiter in the 12th house gives knowledge that is different from what's written in books or taught in lectures. It's the type of understanding that comes from sitting quietly with something, turning it over in our heart and arriving at our own truth. And so during Jupiter Dasha, something within her woke up, and even without the influence of her parents, right? Her parents were not believing in anything higher, but she was moved by something deep inside and had natural faith in a higher being. And that is the power of, such a strong Jupiter here in the D24. It manifests a natural spiritual inclination. Jupiter is connected here to the 12th house. It's also in the 12th house. And as the important karaka in the D24, shows her capacity to seek the why behind life. She genuinely inquired into the purpose of her existence. She intuitively sensed that there was more to life than what meets the eye. And so Jupiter here in Sagittarius manifests her faith and wisdom, even, at such a young age. But Jupiter is also here separated by Saturn. And there must have been limitations to how much she could understand and how much her faith was validated. Perhaps she didn't fully understand what exactly she was experiencing. Nevertheless, in many ways, this Jupiter Dasha set the tone for the rest of her life. The silent knowing that she was connected to something higher started in Jupiter Dasha. Now, because of Saturn, in later dashas, this silent knowing that she has a connection with a higher being might have gotten less here and there, but it never fully left her. She opened herself to a higher reality, and during favorable periods was able to experience it, learn and grow wiser, and find out more about her true self. Saturn Dasha followed from the age of 11 to 30. Saturn is placed here in the 12th house, and Saturn is a separator, and Saturn separates her from the 12th cusp and also here the 12th Lord Jupiter. And so we can see that Saturn separates her from the more contemplative spiritual dimension of learning in the D24 that was awakened during Jupiter Dasha, right? In Saturn Dasha, we no longer, see her, spontaneously asking, the divine for help or seeking silence to contemplate the deeper truth of life. That spiritual quality faded into the background in Saturn Dasha, right? Saturn here separates her from her inner contemplation and focuses on understanding and learning external practical matters. Now, what exactly are those practical matters? Well, Saturn here rules the 1st, 2nd, 7th, and 8th house. And it also rules here Venus, who is the ruler of the 4th and 10th house. And Saturn gets manifested here by Jupiter. And so that is going to expand Saturn's knowledge about how to function in this world, how to succeed and earn respect. So Saturn rules here the 1st house, and she learned about herself and her role in the world. She learned about her strength, but also her weaknesses. Saturn rules the 2nd house of values and resources. This was, of course, the time when she went to school, and she was working very hard at school to become a straight A student because she wanted also to make a name for herself, right? So Saturn gave her a keen sense of how to operate within the school system successfully and even rise through the ranks. She was even elected vice president of her high school at an age when most students were just trying to get through their studies. And we can also see here that, of course, this also ties in here the 10th house of status and authority as well, right? That she actually in school had a position. Now, sometime after that, she was even appointed treasurer, responsible for handling school funds. Saturn here rules the 8th house and gave her knowledge about finances and how to manage the school funds. We also got here the 7th house involved as well, and she, in her various positions in school, she developed a solid understanding of relationships and also public life, right? She knew how to engage with others, with the world, and how to handle the expectations of others with maturity when she was growing up. Again, the D24 deals with all kinds of knowledge and how much we understand, both material and spiritual matters. Now, with regards to her spiritual understanding, her desire for this type of higher contemplation faded, and her earlier spiritual longings went largely dormant during this practical sadhana dasha, we can see that Saturn has somewhat of a 12th house agenda, right? Because Saturn does rule Mars and Venus, who rules as well here the 12th and 11th from the Karaka Jupiter. So Saturn does have a secondary agenda for learning about the higher truth of life and self-exploration. However, Saturn here is also separating from the 12th house and the 12th Lord Jupiter. And this is a stronger influence. This is the primary influence here in the D24 during Saturn Dasha. And so she focused mostly on becoming competent and respected in the real world and learning all about that during Saturn Dasha. Saturn Dasha was a period where she was trying to build a strong foundation of knowing how to be a leader and someone that others can rely on. Next came Mercury Dasha from the age of 30 to 47. Mercury is the other key karaka of the D24. And Mercury also rules the important 11th house in the D24, as well as the 5th house, the 3rd, and the 9th house. Now Mercury here gets separated by Rahu, but does get some help here from Venus and Mars from its exaltation sign. But this help here from Venus and Mars is just not good enough to make up the damage that's done here by Rahu, who is separating her from understanding something truly. And so in Mercury Dasha, Mercury's ability to assimilate, process, and articulate information effectively gets lost. And as a result, she really struggled to make sense of the things that Mercury rules. Mercury rules the 5th house of children. She tried to be a good mother, but she just couldn't grasp what her children needed from her. There was a huge emotional disconnection. At Mercury, we can see he also rules the moon, which is the planet of motherhood and emotional connection. Her son particularly came to believe that his mother didn't even like him, and any effort from her side to talk with her son escalated into greater conflict. And so this is really a textbook result of Mercury conjunct Rahu in the D24, and also here ruling the 5th house, which shows a lack of understanding of one's children that leads to emotional distance and resentment. Right? They couldn't have a normal conversation with each other. There was no common ground at all. And as a result, her son left home as soon as he was able to. Mercury also rules the 11th house. The 11th house shows the love and respect and validation that we receive from others. But Mercury here gets afflicted by Rahu. And this indicates distorted thought processes that make her feel offended and unwanted. Right? It's not that people didn't care about her, she just didn't know how to receive their care. And that is the effect of an afflicted Mercury connected to the 11th house in the D24. Right? This is when understanding gets so distorted that a person might mistake love for hate. When her friends praised her, she told herself that they surely didn't mean it. They would rather be with someone else than her. Even when others tried to give her an affectionate hug or make a playful joke, she thought that they would just slide right past her. All she thought was, no one appreciates me, and they just pretend to like me. And so with Mercury, Rahu conjunction in the D24, there's an inner cognitive distortion where one cannot understand something as it is, and rather misinterprets it as something different. And connected here to the 11th house, she misunderstands gestures of affection and considers them insincere or hypocritical. right? And so for her, Mercury Dasha became an impossible period for changing her mindset, because Mercury is just afflicted without any tangible help. When Mercury is strong, then it gives the right understanding and also the ability to apply it in life. But when afflicted, then Mercury makes one confused, and we cannot understand something as it is anymore, and then we get into a lot of problems in life. And so here this person, holds on to her fixed ideas and opinions, and then becomes very critical of others. Okay? And as a result, she lost a lot of her friends and people close to her during Mercury Dasha. In fact, we can also see here that Mercury is as well placed here in the 8th house, which has to do with breakdowns and moments of crisis. And in the D24, this shows that during Mercury Dasha, she suffered from an intellectual crisis, where no matter how much she tried to make things better, she ended up making things worse and eventually destroyed everything. Then came Ketu Dasha, and Ketu is conjunct Mercury here, and so Ketu Dasha continued the theme of Mercury Dasha. However, this is still Ketu Dasha and not Mercury Dasha, and there are differences, particularly if we consider that Ketu Dasha here is from the age of 47 to 54, which is mainly after Ketu's maturation at 48. Ketu, when it is afflicted, can make a person indifferent to whether something is resolved or not, and so during Ketu Dasha, she just lost interest in trying to fix things. Her mood really changed. She became more quiet and introverted. The same old confusion and misunderstandings were still there, but she was no longer interested in what was going on around her. She was no longer restless or bothered. Ketu just made her withdraw and choose silence and solitude instead. This wasn't the silence that invoked some deep inner healing, rather it brought an opportunity to escape and gave her temporary relief.